It's 5 o'clock. All right. Thanks, everybody. 5 o'clock, we'll call the July 12th Administration Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please. Close.
Kara Cook,
Present.
Paul Burning,
Here.
Scott Counter,
Present.
Bob Fiedler,
Present.
Bob Long.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, our next item, approval of minutes. Looks like we have a couple minutes that were in the packet from Tuesday, March 15th, and also Tuesday, June 14th.
Yeah, sorry about the March 15th. It got missed somehow. I was looking back and it pulled it into the agenda, and I'm like, why did it do that? And we never had approved them, so.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Supervisor Brown.
In our June minutes, it shows that we don't have a vice chair in the minutes. It shows that we only have a chair and the rest are supervisors. So that'd be the correction I would ask be made.
Okay. Any other corrections? All right, so outside of that, now let the minutes stand as corrected. Okay, next item, public comment. We have a item here for item number 2, the library. If you're here for public comment on the library, I think we'll take that comment at the time. But does anyone have public comment on any other items on the agenda? Any comments? Any comments? All right, we'll close public comment. And business items. First item, financial report for June 2022. Ken?
Let me jump down to the financial report. So the financial report is reflective of June. So we're midway through the year. Everything's looking pretty good. If you see lots of green numbers on the spreadsheets, that's a good thing. If you see red numbers, those are bad things. And then the funner stuff towards the end, the capital projects. If you look at our capital projects, a lot of those are still in progress. If you look to the taxes, we had a new record month for sales tax collection. The first 3 months were really kind of lagging there in that $700,000 range per month, which is kind of light for us. But then we had 1.1 million come in this past month. So that's a spike up from what we have been seeing. And like I said, that's a new record month for St. Croix County. Not exactly what I was expecting, but we'll take it. And then the last sheet there is the ARPA dollars, how we've currently allocated those dollars, and how we've spent so far on those projects. Are there any questions, though, on the financial report? Otherwise, there's no anomalies to report.
Supervisor Long?
I know I'm redundant in asking this every time, but I'm going to do it again anyhow. Any unexpected numbers, any surprises, good or bad, or anything that you would not expect to have seen?
No, looking through the sheet, everything is really tracking where we expect to be midway through the year here. So I think we're right on target where we should be for the year.
All right, any other questions? It doesn't look like it. Okay, move on to the next item. Resolution approving Hudson Area Joint Library Agreement. Ken, do you want to provide background on this?
Yeah. So we've been working on this for a couple of years now. So the city of Hudson primarily and us have been talking about an agreement whereby the county could levy an additional amount. We brought this back from a couple months ago. It went to the county board. We kicked it back. And part of the reason we kicked it back is we got different guidance from the Department of Revenue. So that guidance from the Department of Revenue said, don't do it the way you guys were thinking about it. Do it this way instead. So the 4 municipality partners continue to levy the amount that they have been levying, just like they always have. And then those 4 municipalities would agree to let the county levy a library tax against the municipalities at basically a dollar amount, which would then calculate to a rate of whatever their choosing is. So that if they said the Hudson Joint Library needs an extra $500,000, levy that against our 4 municipalities. So we would just create a separate tax levy just for those 4 municipalities and charge it against them. That was what the Department of Revenue said to do. We did get outside legal opinion, though, about what the risk was for the county to do that. So Andy Phillips, who's the attorney for WCA, did caution us against that. He said it does pose significant risk for the county to do that. There's a couple of issues with creating a separate tax rate that's outside of what's specifically authorized by the state statute. So, I mean, to put it in the most basic terms. So that creates a risk for the county that we'd be dragged into a lawsuit, or the Department of Revenue, even though they gave us the guidance to do it this way, would come back and somebody else would say, no, 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 that person was wrong, you can't do that. Now here's a penalty for doing it. So there's significant risk. So, you know, in talking with Corporation Counsel and myself about what the risk benefit for the county is, you know, we caution you to really take a hard look at if there's a different solution out there, rather than the county getting involved and taking on the risk. But as far as what the agreement entails, as I stated in the beginning, that's the basic parameters of it. We would levy a special tax against the 4 municipalities.
All right, does anyone have initial comment, or should we, you want to hear from anyone that's here? Yeah, okay. Does anyone have any public comment on this item? And if you do, if you just want to head up to the podium there and state your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Cruz. I'm the Supervisor 1 from the town of St. Joe's. One question I had with that statement was, would based on the comments just made, would that mean that the county would take no intervention for the library based on the special tax, or would you want feedback from each municipality to know if a separate levy item would be preferred?
Yeah, I think the agreement is actually agreeing to the special levy, so those 4 bodies would be already agreeing to it. That's not the issue. Our caution is that it would be somebody else that would be determining that it was illegal retroactively, and that's where the risk lies for the county. So.
Okay. I didn't hear the retroactive component of
Yeah,
the levy,
yep.
which is why I was asking.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Well, if he wants to come up.
I want to learn something from you on how, you've seen about 6 different proposals and, you know, and I'm just, curious as to what was going to go on. I was invited to come up. I mean, I'd be happy, you know, I mean, say something. I mean, if you, up there, you want to. No, you were here first.
While the mayor's going to the podium.
Yeah,
Supervisor. Maybe this would be directed at the administrator. The posture we're in now, none of the municipalities have endorsed what we're going to consider. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, this agreement is relatively brand new. We just finished drafting it maybe 3 weeks ago. So I don't believe any of those other communities have taken up the new agreement.
Okay,
Okay, I'm Stan Wecken, Village of North Hudson. You know, like I said, I'm here basically to try to understand which proposal you're, you know, looking at. We've had the cover letters, and we've done considerable number crunching on what, you know, because ultimately it's always, you know, how much more money can we spend on that library? And so with our number crunching, you know, we're seeing that, you know, if the joint library was dissolved and we paid, as the county does through every other municipality that's got a library, there would actually be more money coming into the library than there would be if we stay as a joint library. Now, if I'm wrong, I would be happy to be corrected, but that's everything that we've done with our numbers. And I think if you want it to be the most beneficial to the library, then, I can, I have no idea what my board will do, but I'm, open to anything that will try to help our taxpayers. That's my main goal anytime since I've been doing this, is to try to get the best deal for the taxpayers. So, yeah, I'm just curious to what you're going to do.
Thank you.
Is this considered public comment? Can we interact with them, or can we ask questions? Because someone said public comment, but
Right.
I want to know if that's officially considered public comment, or?
Yeah,
As a,
Yeah, this would not-
committee, we have.
correct. This would not be
Flexibility, right?
public comment. This would be an interaction dialogue. This is controlled by the chair, however she deems it appropriate.
I'm deeming a dialogue appropriate to come to a answer. All right, go ahead.
Madam Chair and members, Rich O'Connor, Mayor of Hudson. Let me preface what I'm going to say with, we have been working on a solution to our library issue for as long as I can remember. I was appointed to the library board by Mayor Burchell, I think in 2012, maybe 2013. We had an issue back then, and that issue has only become more exacerbated, even though, and maybe because of the attempts to try to rectify the situation, and that was legislatively. I am committed 100% to a public library. I think that they are absolutely critical and vital to a community, especially a community like ours. And I want to make sure that everybody else is as committed as I am. And we have exhausted, I shouldn't say exhausted, we're not done yet, but we have come up with many different resolutions to our situation. All have been thwarted or not pursued legislatively. And we're in a difficult situation. We're in an extremely difficult situation. We're in a situation where if we don't get a remedy here soon, we may not have a Hudson Public Library. Now, I heard Stan talk about more money coming in if we dissolve the joint library. I don't believe that's true because, number one, you're working off the premise that Hudson then would have to pick up the bulk of, or all of the cost of the library. And we can't afford that. There's no way we can afford that. I don't know about the numbers that you're talking about, Stan. I haven't seen them. So I don't know if there would be more money coming in, but I do know this, that you would be expecting that money to come from the city of Hudson, and that can't happen. So we're in a very dire situation. Believe me, I would not be here asking for your help if we didn't sincerely need it, and we do. So we've come up with a couple different proposals. The first one was the one that was considered here, I think, a month ago, and we were asked to go back to the Department of Revenue, which we did, at the same time that this body decided that they should be asking the county association attorneys for an opinion as well. We have 3 different opinions from the state on this. First opinion from the person that drafted the legislation in the first place that we're talking about. The second opinion from the Department of Revenue, and the third opinion from the Department of Information. All 3 state agencies saying that this is permissible. And the original proposal that we brought here a month ago was permissible. Keep in mind, the person that drafted the legislation said this. The people that you're listening to perhaps today are people that are interpreting what this person drafted. I think the drafter of the legislation has a better idea of what that legislation does than somebody trying to interpret it. But after that meeting, we went back to the Department of Revenue. And the Department of Revenue, as Ken alluded to, they said essentially, even though what you ran by us before is permissible, it's kind of cumbersome, a little bit awkward. So we have a better idea for you guys. This is our idea for a solution for your problem, coming from the Department of Revenue, which is what's being considered right now. I don't understand how anybody could say that anybody's at risk, that the Department of Revenue might turn around and say, well, that was a bad idea. Who gave you that idea? Why are you doing that when it was their idea in the first place? They might come back and say, you know what, we're not going to allow this to happen anymore. They're not going to be punitive. We've got opinions from every agency that weighs in on this. And I would hope that you would be persuaded, more persuaded, by those opinions than you would by the counsel for the county association. And I would like to have an opportunity to sit down and talk to them and see what it is that they think is so risky, given that this idea has come actually from the Department of Revenue, the people that are overseeing this whole process right now. So that's what I have to say to you. Again, hat in hand, we need your help. Our library needs your help. And if we didn't, I wouldn't be here today. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as it's stated. And I'd like Rich to hang at the podium, please.
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Discussion.
So if what we're looking at is maybe not a permanent solution, being that we could have some issues potentially, to Ken's point, to Rich's point, and to our library's point, we need the help now. We don't need the help 2 years from now or 5 years from now. So aside from this, I would also like to make a suggestion that we put together, that we take our library planning committee that we have and explore the probability of doing a county-funded library system in which county or libraries can opt in, and the county can they can pool resources between each other, staff, etc. It's something I've actually started putting to paper in draft. Right, Corp Council. Anyway, I've started like kind of exploring it on my own, looking at it data-wise and how that would work. Obviously, I don't have all the answers, but I'd like to ask Rich if that's something he would support looking at, being that we have 4 municipalities that have a board. Would you be in favor of us looking at something like that, a county-run library system?
So, as I said before, I'm all in favor of our library. I want our library to survive. If that's the way it would happen, I'm all for it. Absolutely. Then I know that our library would be funded adequately, funded to the level that all libraries in the state, other libraries in the state are being funded at, with the exception of some joint libraries, I guess, similar situation as ours. But yeah, if that's the way our library can survive, absolutely, I'm all for it. You have two, if that is a proposal, you have two proposals in front of you that could help us make sure that our library survives and continues to thrive here in this city. But obviously, both of those are in your hands.
So, I mean, we look at this as a temporary solution. If it falters and the Department of Revenue comes back a year from now or 2 years from now and says, this is not the way it should be, we at least have a mechanism moving forward that we're exploring other options, and one of them being a potential county library system. Opt in, opt out. That's my idea. I've been holding it to myself for quite a while, but there you have it now.
I wonder if we can get some comments from our corporation counsel about the risk that was being described, and in the scenario that Supervisor Burning just described, if the Department of Revenue were to come back, like what would that mean for the county?
Two things, just to answer Supervisor Burning's question first. So this is just a year agreement, so it would be something that would have to be addressed each year. This is just for the tax year for 2022. And then in relation to the WCA's legal opinion, so obviously the concerns are that we're doing something that's not allowed by statute. And so the risks being not necessarily that the DOR would come back to us, that would be one issue, but if a taxpayer feels that they're being treated unfairly or taxed more, they could come forward and file an action against the county or the member municipalities indicating that they're, being treated differently than the other taxpayers within the county because they have a special tax that's being assessed against them. So that's the other risk factor that, the WCA and the county have been looking at, whether or not this is going to create any type of litigation that a taxpayer would bring against the county for assessing a special increased tax to these member municipalities pursuant to this agreement. We did take some of the suggestions provided by Attorney Phillips and put them into the agreement. So the recommendations about adding language to the indemnification clause that was amended in this updated agreement, to add language about the special tax. So we did add that language to this indemnification language also. Obviously, the agreement as drafted would require the 4 member municipalities to indemnify the county if we were sued. And then I think one of the recommendations from legal counsel is to make sure that we get certificates of insurance from each member municipality indicating that their insurance coverage would cover this kind of action if there was a lawsuit filed, that their insurance coverage would cover any litigation against the county and through their indemnification of us.
Let's go first. Fiedler.
Just very short. I think our corporate counsel did an excellent job of describing the legal setting, and I think WCA's legal counsel did an outstanding memo as well. However, I am persuaded by the Department of Revenue memoranda and their reasoning, and I know there's going to be gaps either way we do this, but I think that they stated, I think, very clearly what we could do and even suggested an improvement on it. And I just tend to agree with that proposal, and that effectively, I think, concurs with what the mayor just stated.
Supervisor Long.
So I've said this before, I'll say it again. It really comes down to, do you want a library or not? If you want a library, you got to fund it properly. So that's what we're trying to do. I think I want to make one clarification based on the cover memo in the packet. I believe that if the joint library were dissolved, it actually would increase the funding to the Hudson Library, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, do you want me to address what
Please.
that scenario looks like? So an alternate scenario, and I'm not trying to tell the city and the other members what to do, just my knowledge of library organization, library laws in Wisconsin, is if the library disbanded, the 3 exiting members would transfer their levy capacity to the city of Hudson. The city of Hudson would be able to then be allowed to levy the same dollar amount that the current members are levying. So the current funding for the library is exactly the same. It would all be coming from the city of Hudson. And I understand that's not a great scenario for the city of Hudson, but that's what would be allowed. The library then would also be eligible for rural circulation number against the 3 members that exited, and we have calculated that number for this budget that we're working on right now, and it would come out to about $400,000 more revenue for the library than they are currently receiving. So that would be another option to solve this issue.
Supervisor Long.
One other thing that I think concerned me about the risk of being sued was the concept of the municipality they're filing an exemption from the library tax, from the county library tax. So from a citizen standpoint, okay, the municipality is exempt from library tax, but if we do this additional library tax on top of that, all of a sudden they might say, well, wait, I thought I was exempt, and all of a sudden now I'm getting a library tax from the county, and I think that could be problematic. One suggestion that I might make is there a possibility that, well, possibility, we could, why don't we take some of the legal ramifications that we've received and go back to the Department of Revenue and say, you know, what do you think about this stuff? Is this legitimate? Or the other case may be this is a fairly novel approach, and so it wouldn't be unusual, with all due respect to the attorneys in the room, it wouldn't be unusual for an attorney to say, I'm not so sure about this because it's never been tested, we don't know, could be problems. So that's pretty to be expected, I guess, of what I would have expected from the WCA. So I just wonder if it would be worthwhile to go back to the Department of Revenue and have that conversation to say, can you give us some assurances that you know, we're probably going to be okay.
So that, I mean, that's a possibility, right? That we could send this, they have not seen this agreement, the new agreement, is that correct? Department of Revenue, or is that incorrect?
I do not believe the Department of Revenue has reviewed the updated agreement.
I don't know that they've reviewed the agreements. We've only talked to them about what the parameters of an agreement would be, but they wouldn't necessarily give us a legal opinion or review the legal agreement. So.
I just wondered if it'd be practical or prudent to at least contact them again and say, you know, this is some of the guidance that we are considering. Don't give us a legal opinion, obviously, but can you at least give us a response to let us know that there's some assurance that the arrangement is still going to be workable?
Other comments? Supervisor Counter.
So under what you'd brought up earlier on the circulation, and if they were to dissolve and do the rural circulation, you said it was a 400,000. Does that even come close to meeting what the needs that they were looking for under the current, if we forged ahead with a special collection, or would they still be way short of what is necessary to keep them so that the library can function?
Yeah, I defer to the library on that. President of the library board or...
President of the library board. Well, first of all, levy capacity that would, under that scenario, that would pass to the city is by definition right now, as we know it, is inadequate, right? That's why we're here in the first place. So even if all that levy capacity were transferred to the city, it's still inadequate. Moreover, our residents of the city would then be saddled with the taxation of the library. And again, as I said earlier, that's untenable for the city. And I have not seen the numbers for the rural circulation, so I can't speak to that. So I don't know if that would bring us up to where we needed to be. I'm hearing from Ken and from Stan. I don't know where Stan got his numbers, but I presume they probably came from Ken unless you did them internally. That the rural circulation might put us over what the state funding formula, if that's the question, would present us. But again, it's an untenable situation for us at the city. And I don't know that we would be able to do that. Likely what would happen is we would go to referendum. And that referendum would likely happen this fall. And everybody could kind of guess what might happen there.
I have another question for Corp Counsel. So with the added indemnification pieces in here that the other partners in this are required to have, that from your perspective, does that significantly reduce the county risk that was stated in the WCA memo?
I don't believe it significantly reduces the county risk. I think we're still at risk. I think that would help alleviate some of the risks, indicating that the member municipalities would indemnify us. But as indicated in the legal opinion, WCA is not even sure whether or not us receiving a tax penalty could be something that the member municipalities could indemnify us for. And so we would really need to look to see whether or not the insurance coverages of the 4 member municipalities would actually indemnify the county for that type of tax penalty. Because it's not for negligence or those things that you're typically indemnifying for. It's for the tax basically penalty that we would receive for doing something that may not be a proper taxation of the citizens of St. Croix County. And so obviously we took their advice and added that language to the agreement, but it doesn't mean we still won't get sued or that we would be responsible if the member municipalities' insurance coverage would not cover that specific type of claim.
Supervisor Counter.
Would there be a way to ask the other municipalities' insurance companies whether they would consider creating a special rider for this particular incident with a review of the contract?
And I think Administrator Witt may have a little bit of information about the insurance coverages, but yes, I think that would be something that we should look into further from the member municipalities to see if their insurance coverage would cover this type of like attacks that we would receive. As you can see in the opinion from WCA, it indicates, we note, however, that we have not specifically researched the question of whether a municipality has the power under state law to agree to compensate a county for a county's loss in shared revenues from the state. So, that's an area that's an undecided area of law, and so there's not really a clear indication as to whether or not that's something that can be covered by the indemnification provision. So we put it in there, but it hasn't been challenged in a court of law yet, so we would have to see what would happen. But I think to protect the county, we would want to ensure that the member municipalities' insurance coverage would cover this type of claim, or a payout under this type of claim.
So if we were to send Wisconsin County Association's legal opinion back to the Department of Revenue and say, hey, here are some concerns that the Wisconsin Counties Association came up with, what do we need to do to make it so that that these concerns are alleviated? I think that's more than fair, and I would say then I would make a motion to move this issue to the next meeting so that those issues could be taken care of.
We do have a motion, right, do we need to act on the first motion? No? Okay. Okay.
Subsidiary motion, so this one can be addressed first.
Yeah, I think
would
that's.
second that.
Okay, second by Supervisor Counter. I think that's significant. I agree with Mayor O'Connor's comments about the value of the library. I think it's super important for our community. But also, it doesn't sound like any of the, we have some questions here, and it doesn't sound like any of the other member communities have time to really look at the issue yet, which they have to all sign, right? So waiting for that month perhaps will give them time to have that conversation as well.
Did you have a comment, Stan?
I can tell you that the Village of North Hudson, we have talked to
You
our
have.
insurance company and numerous times just to clarify as these proposals came through, and we would not be covered for fines and penalties or anything like that. They would defend us, but they would not pay for any kind of fines or whatever that is levied. So, yeah, we're not covered by our insurance companies.
Okay.
So one, if I may, Madam Chair, the question that Supervisor Long had posed, I think, was to the body here about whether you should contact the Department of Revenue. That is already being done.
Supervisor
And
Long.
is that done in the context of the legal opinion?
Everything that we've, yes, they are going to be reviewing
Okay.
the county association opinion.
Perfect. I would suggest, I know that there's a number of unanswered questions and concerns, but I would agree with Supervisor Burning that we need to move forward in addressing those questions and concerns, but at the same time, we're certainly not in a position to move this forward to the full board for any kind of a vote until we get the answers clarified and figure out what the exact agreement should look like. And we'll, I guess, keep cracking.
Supervisor Burning.
And the ultimate goal is to get this library funded so that the 32,000 residents that it currently services has a library that fits what 32,000 residents should have. And right now, it is not comprised of that. We've got a lot of different groups and organizations that depend on the library on top of the public. And I think if we look at this as a temporary solution and work in different branches to come to a long-term solution for this, all it be through the state legislature, through the county, through our municipalities, however that looks. But as the mayor said, we need help, and we need help now. And it's just bleeding personnel, and it has been for years. It's bleeding hours, it's bleeding availability to the public. So anything we can do to make sure that our municipalities are okay in this, to make sure that the library has a situation where we're able to spring forward instead of fall back again and then have to climb out. Whatever we can do to try to find a solution. I appreciate your guys' help and staff's help in doing this. So thank you.
Yep, Supervisor Long.
I just want to add a real quick clarification too, though, that I think it's important to remind ourselves that this is not a county library. So all the county is trying to do is facilitate an agreement to support better funding, but it's not, this is really an agreement between the municipalities to figure out the best approach. It's not necessarily a county issue per se. I just want to clarify that.
All right, any other comment? Are we ready to vote? All right. All in favor of the motion?
And what's the motion that we're voting on?
Motion to postpone to the next administration committee meeting.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Okay, our next item, number 3, resolution establishing library levy. Leah.
Okay, so for this resolution, this will just be establishing the 2022 levy for the 2023 budget. This is purely data-driven numbers calculation. It's simply taking the total operating expenses for the prior year, in this case 21, getting the total circulation, divided those out, come up with the cost per circulation, and then it's multiplied by the rural circulations for each library. Comes up with a total reimbursement amount that we can cover. The state law is that we cover the libraries at 70%. We have been covering them at 100%. This particular calculation, this draft that we have in front of you, is treating everybody exactly the same. So with Hudson, they are at just the normal. The city of Hudson would be at the same calculation as all of the other libraries. As you can see, funded at 100%, they would be at the 73,000 on this one, versus the 70% for them, and then divided it back out per the cost for the harmed libraries. So the total on this for the county libraries, and then the outside, the out-of-county libraries is the 1.1, just over 1.1 million.
Second?
All right. Motion is a second. Any discussion? Excuse me. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'll just take a couple minute break here. Sorry. All right, sorry about that, everybody. Learned how to swallow sometimes. Okay. Uh, Or breathe, that's good, yeah. All right, our next business item, consideration of request for permission to archery hunt the government center property. And it's Ken, I believe. Okay, yep.
Okay, is it okay? My name's Lon Fea. I'm a resident of the town of Hudson, still in St. Croix County. About 8 years ago, we came to the village of North Hudson and the city of Hudson and said, look, you have a deer problem. They're eating all the hostas in sight. People are complaining. I'm sure we all hear this stuff. They get hit by cars. There's an issue, and every few years, the city of Hudson would hire sharpshooters to come in the dark of night and shoot high-powered rifles in the night and kill a few deer. And for that, we paid a substantial sum of money to try to control the deer herd. We came to the city and we came to the village of North Hudson and said, look, we've got people that will do this for free. So I'm not here to ask for any money, no special levies, no tax rates, nothing. We're doing this because we love to hunt. We want to show archery as a viable means of helping to control the deer herd. We're not going to eliminate the deer herd. And for the last 8 years, quite a few of them, Ken, I hate to say, we're actually done right here. We have had this program that you see in front of you in place. And actually, we had been hunting in the county. We were under the impression that we had permission to hunt this parcel. Ken notified us last year we did not. And so obviously we ceased. But he invited us to come back in and talk about it. We're talking archery. We're talking very limited range weapons from very proficient archers. It's very safe. In 8 years, we've had 0 incidences. We have reduced the deer herd by 30 to 40 animals each year among the greater Hudson area, which just helps keep them in check. So we typically concentrate on areas where we get more complaints from the homeowners. And if you could draw a line here, if you go down to Lake Malibu and come up through the school woods and then go out through the Y and back into here and then back over what used to be woods to the south here, that's where the deer live. And the space is getting constricted. There's going to be less space for them, and in talking to the people on Grandview and things such as that, they're seeing an increased number of deer, which both delights and aggravates the heck out of them. So what we're asking for is to have a similar program as this in place for the county, basically for this county property here. We have an insurance policy. We would indemnify, and our insurance company does pay, although it's never had to. We have a $3 million insurance policy just in case we haven't had any incidents. We would typically be right off here where this new parking lot is, back down behind the Y, around in as you come behind Grandview there, and then possibly back over on the north end in there. It's stealth mode. We don't want any problems. If a resident complains, we move. We're keenly aware that we can only do this program if it's not an aggravation to the board, if it's not an aggravation to the city. If there are complaints, the program will just cease. But we haven't had any complaints. We haven't had any incidences, and we have done very well with the program. Now, to be quite honest, we need this property. There are a ton of deer that are piling in here, and we'd like to, nicely as can be done, reduce their numbers a little bit, to reduce the traffic accidents, to reduce the flower eating. And as some person asked me, he says, well, can you do anything about the deer ticks? I said, no, we're good archers, but we can't hit those. But it does reduce the deer ticks if there are fewer deer. So what we're asking for is for you to respectfully allow us to hunt this property under the auspices of this. We could draft an agreement for the county if that's what you want. It would be identical to this, and we would name you on our insurance policy. Low risk, high reward, and that's what we ask. Any questions?
Supervisor Burning.
What are you looking for a motion, Ken?
The administration committee has authority of the use of government property, so it's this committee that would either authorize or not authorize this hunt. So a motion to enter into a contract agreement or not to.
I make a motion that the administration enter into a contract with, was it River Valley Deer Management? And yeah, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Supervisor Long. Supervisor Long.
Okay, so, Lon, I lived on Grandview Drive for 28 years.
Okay. Which
And-
end? The south end or the north end?
The north end.
Okay.
And so I'm very familiar with the deer problem. I have a good buddy who gave up on his hostas and dug everyone out in his yard, and they came to my yard, so I got to plant them all. I now live in the town of Hudson, and I see very few deer. I saw way, way more on Grandview in the city than I ever see in the town of Hudson. So it's a significant problem for the surrounding homeowners. I would say if 9 out of 10 homeowners, if you surveyed them, they would say, please do this, because they can't, they just, it's a significant problem. And as long as we feel that we're minimizing the risks, which is incredibly important, there's a lot of people that walk those paths. And that we have to be extremely careful of. We might even consider, posting some signs that may be during certain hours or something along those lines.
No, sir.
Oh.
If you're inviting a disaster.
Oh, okay.
We've had it. It's megaphones, red paint. It's not pretty.
So the stealth approach
It's in and
is-
out. We
okay.
used to hunt in Grandview. We used to hunt the little area coming down from the homes, down towards where the golf course was. And we had a complaint. One of our hunters, they bring the stands in, they bring the stands out. They had climbing sticks. And a woman called, just terrified. She says, there's some guy out here in camo with a submachine gun and da-da-da-da-da-da, and the police came and people were in uproar, and we just don't hunt there anymore. We want to stay stealthy. If we post it, they will come. That is an absolute.
I guess my main point is, I'm sorry, but
we're
starting to ramble. We really need this. We really need to allow this and give it a shot, so to speak, and see if we can help curb the deer population, because it really is a significant problem for our homeowners.
And this is the spot. They come up from the water retention ponds. They come right up through there, right behind your house. They come from over here. This is a great spot to intercept them. And we're in other places too, because they do wisen up. And the landowners will tell you they're not afraid of. They know that's why they're here. They know you go outside and they challenge you as opposed to the other way around. But at the same time, it's beautiful. It's why we live in rural Wisconsin. It's what we love. We want to see deer. We want to see animals. We just don't want to see so many of them.
Other comments? Supervisor Counter.
Well, I'm in agreement for the project and thinking about it, but I just had a few comments to bring up on it. The first one, under when St. Croix County does any types of hunting permits and things on the county properties, they generally follow under Chapter 30, under Section 30.14, which they have some rules and regulations as far as that are specific to St. Croix County for hunting on county property. And so that would be something, we definitely would want to consider, or at least I would think you'd want to think about.
I would disagree with you there, sir. We adhere to all laws. The DNR used to sponsor this program, and when the laws changed for the state of Wisconsin where you could not restrict hunting other than for danger zones and whatnot, and you can grant permission or not grant permission. But if I lived next door to this county property and had a big enough lot so that I had setback to avoid an issue, you could legally hunt there. So the DNR came back to us and said, look, you are bound by dot and verse of the Wisconsin deer hunting season, okay? Archery rules. Sunset, sundown, whatever. It is.
So does the Wisconsin regulation have something that says that you can leave deer stands up for the entire season?
No, it does not.
Okay, that's one of the things that's in the county regulation. Does the Wisconsin regulation regulate that you can use trail cams and things for the entire season
Well, there's no reason not to, but no,
on public property? So there's
it-
a problem with that, with people's privacy that also use the park for other reasons, that they may not necessarily want the idea of having trail cams that are set up that are following trails that are going through the park system, because they might think of it as for an ulterior motive. So these are just some of the things that are there
If
that I
you
just
wish-
want you to understand.
I understand. If you wishes to also abide by those rules, we will do so.
Okay. So those are just a couple of things. And then, of course, I don't know, do you do baiting and feeding of the animals?
Yes, we do, which is legal in the county and legal in the state. We're trying to pinpoint the animals for humane harvest out of the public view.
Okay. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is just that we follow those, what's in Chapter 30.
Right, and we do that anyway. We don't have deer cams up year-round. We don't lever stands up year-round. We just don't do it, period, not because of ordinance.
Well, it's a safety issue for us
Right.
too, because if some kid crawls up there and breaks their neck,
Well aware.
you know, it's county land.
And that's, we never want to use that insurance, ever.
So, okay, thank you. The other thing I was noticing in your agreement that you had with Hudson, the individual you had there representing through the DNR, Harvey, he hasn't been there for a few years, so you might need to update your contract
Fine.
with the right name.
Yeah.
So I think that was the main things I had. Thank you.
Other comments? I just have a couple. I mean, I definitely respect what you're trying to do here, and I'm not suggesting that it's your practices are unsafe, but it just makes me nervous to have a hunt in this area. I used to also live up in that, near the property, and my kids were, with the neighbor kids, running around and hiding in the bushes and doing whatever up there, and it just makes me very uncomfortable. Again, I know I'm not suggesting you're not being safe or you don't have the proper insurance, but it's just not something that I can support at this time. But, other comments? Okay. Comments? Supervisor, you're good? Okay.
My motion was simply to have administration give them the authority to work on this agreement. If Supervisor Counter, I would suggest that you just give that, your suggestion to Ken, and I think he would just do that without a motion.
I've written it down, yeah. So
Okay.
your motion authorizes me to sign a contract. So the terms of the contract, I'm gathering input from you guys.
All right, so are we ready to vote?
Do you want what Supervisor Counter, do you want that in a motion, or are you
It'll be
going to
included in
oblige?
the contract.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? No? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will happily encompass your wishes. Ken, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And just for clarification again for everybody, this item does not need to go to the board, so the administration committee has the ability to grant that. So, okay, our next item, consideration of reclassification request for Community Development Administrative Associate 2 to Marketing Coordinator. And I think Audrey has this.
Yeah, current job description for the Administrative Associate 2 does have a marketing component to it, but over the last several years, that job description has changed based on the duties that are actually being performed by the person in the job. So there was a reclassification request that came from Community Development to make that more into a full marketing coordinator position based on the need for that within the Parks Department. And so the reclass was completed using the McGrath point analysis and looking at market comparables and regraded from a 55 to a 62.
All right, thank you. Any comments? Questions? Supervisor Lund?
If I was reading this correctly, so it kind of went back and forth. So could you give us a little what happened there and why? And that seemed a little goofy to
I'll
me.
put that on Ken. I wasn't here at the time.
So it was an administrative position through 2015. I think in 2016, there was a request to make it more marketing centered as they focused on creating marketing materials for the parks. And so I remember we struggled, but we got it through the county board to reclassify it as marketing, and then that person left. and then the department had requested to go back to an administrative position. So with the marketing emphasis, as you noted, that the current administrative position has. There's been, this is the second or third person since the one that had left, that had been the last marketing person. And he's really developed into that marketing development role more than maybe his predecessor had.
Okay. Other questions? Well, I'll make a motion to reclassify, to approve the reclassification request from Community Development Administrative Associate 2 to Marketing Coordinator.
I second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, all's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item number 6, resolution amending personnel policies. And I think, Audrey, this is you again.
Yeah, so for the first one, overtime and compensatory time policy proposed changes, that came as a suggestion from the finance department after looking at WRS rules that basically stated that we could be penalized for the way that we are currently allowing our compensatory time to be paid out in a year that it's not earned. So that is where the change came from. So we just created new language stating that instead of being able to carry over your compensatory time, it will be paid out at the end of every year, in order to avoid penalties through WRS.
All right. Questions?
The other policy, they're in one resolution.
Oh,
Okay,
yes, sorry.
that's what I was wondering. And then the second policy, breastfeeding support policy, proposed changes. We just added a section on employee responsibilities. The amount of nursing mothers on staff right now has just kind of brought up some changes that need to be made to the policy based on so many mothers in the building that are needing to use certain facilities, and so we just wanted to kind of redraft employee responsibilities versus employer responsibilities.
Okay. Questions? No? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Motion by Supervisor Long,
Second.
second by Supervisor Burning. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Item number 7, consideration of health insurance plan design for 2023. Audrey, and we looked at this a little bit we talked about it a little bit last month.
Yeah, so last month we had a presentation from J.A. Counter. They presented the 3 different plan design options for 2023. There was some discussion about maybe going towards a high deductible health plan with an HSA option, and you guys kind of asked me to go back to the employee base, provide some education, and see, what do the employees want. So over the last couple weeks, we had meetings with a good portion of the employee population that is enrolled in the health plan. Is very education focused, basically letting them know this is where our current design is, this is what future designs could look like, the differences between traditional plans and high deductible plans versus flexible spending accounts and health savings accounts. Based on that education, then we put out a survey to say, for 2023, kind of what would you prefer your plan option to be with no changes to the plan, an increase in out-of-pocket max or an increase in deductible, and then looking towards the future, do you have interest in moving towards a high deductible plan with an HSA? Overall, those that participated in the survey, there were quite a few like retiree age employees who it wouldn't impact them necessarily what we do at this point on going towards an HSA. They decided not to fill out the survey, and then just some that they didn't really, either way was fine with them. They didn't fill out the survey either. So we did have some non-participants in the survey, but for those that did fill it out, the vote really was that they wanted to stick with that traditional health plan, at least over the next couple of years, to see kind of what happens to premiums, what happens to claims, and what changes we would have to be or forced to make to that plan based on that claim increase over time. But that's where their kind of mindset was right now. But either way, all three options for 2023 are good. Obviously, the number one plan they picked was no changes, right? Everybody's kind of feeling the crunch this year on a financial basis, so they would prefer no changes to their actual out-of-pocket expense towards claims. They would prefer to take that towards a higher renewal on their premiums. But each of the options is a good option.
All right, questions? And comments? Supervisor Long?
Yeah, the survey results really aren't very surprising. But it's good. I mean, you've got to ask, you got to ask people, what they're interested in. So it's good. I've been involved in the benefits community for my entire career. I worked with retirement plans and 401k plans relentlessly for 40 years. So I'm very familiar with HSAs. And I truly believe that at some point we need to start moving in that direction. And this third option doesn't really dive into that HSA, but it kind of helps start the movement toward that arrangement. I think that, I know employees would view that as, well, you're taking something away from me. And in many respects, that would be true. But I think in the long run, we're much better off moving in that direction. And I think that the going toward an HSA will eventually actually enhance our benefit package. And it's going to look much better in a couple of years if we at least start moving in that direction. So it's kind of hard to start that process, but I really believe that in the long run, it's going to be better for our employees. So I would be in favor of the third option, despite the survey results, which I totally respect.
Other comments or thoughts? Oh, yeah, Audrey?
Based on that, right, on your comment, because that did get brought up as well, is that not necessarily are they completely against it, the 75% that voted to remain on the traditional plan. I think more so it was at this point in time, based on our current renewal and how our plan is running, why make that big of a move right now? Where's the urgency in it? So if we need to do that a couple years down the road and start looking at that based on, we just financially cannot afford to continue on with increases in claims at $600,000 per year. They understand that and that we would maybe need to move that direction. They're just wondering, do we need to do it now, right? We like the traditional plan. We're used to it. The only other thing was that we used to have a high deductible health plan 3 years ago, and we got rid of it. So they're a little confused on, well, we had one, you took it away, and now you want to go back already so soon. And there was some harsh feelings about the HRA component that got taken away as well. So I think they're a little timid about going backwards, and we definitely explained that HSA can never be taken away. It is yours, and all the pros and benefits of what an HSA can offer. I think that's where some of that hesitancy comes from, though, is just previous experience of what happened 3 years ago. So,
Supervisor Burning.
Switching to the HSA plan, how much money would that save the county on an annual basis?
Yeah, I think the HSA is just a different delivery mechanism of the health insurance. And so how you structure it can save the county money or not save the county any money at all. It's all in how we structure it and how we decide to fund the HSA component part of it. What we can tell you between these three options is the percentage increase in premiums between them. The first one is just status quo. We'd be at a 2.25% increase. If we increase just the out-of-pocket maximum, we drop that down to 2%, and if we increase the deductible by $250, we increase the premium increase down to 1.4%. So we really only have the current year fiscal impact of these small changes. The HSA changes next year are too early to predict. But I agree with Bob. I think long-term, the HSA is a benefit to the employees. And the employees that are retiring in the next 5 years, they may not have enough time to build it up. But an employee that stays in that 20 years, it is going to be a huge benefit to them. They will be very thankful that the county had that HSA available. So I'm looking long-term solutions for the county and what we need to do to get to an HSA, because I agree. I think.
Yeah, I totally concur with that as well. It is a very, very nice benefit for employees to have that extra account. One thing we should consider petitioning is Congress to raise the level that you can put in there, because it's ridiculous with a family my size and the deductible I have. I can't even fit my. Anyway, whatever. That's beside the point. We're not talking about my beautiful deductible. Okay, yeah, so based on this and not the HSA plan, which one of these three do the employees overwhelmingly prefer? Did we survey that one?
So just on these three right here? Yeah, it was, so 70 votes out of the 115 voted for no changes to the plan, which I suppose isn't, so the keep the current plan design option is.
And are we considering this, like, we have a delta that we have to make up, right, for next year's budget. So are we considering any of this to make up for that delta, or is that on us? Do you have a different, are we looking at different things?
So the budget guidelines that the county board has laid out for me was to correct the structural deficit in the budget first and foremost. So pile all the new money on, fix the structural deficit. Okay, I'm going to have some money left over. Number two was employee compensation. So everything I can, I'm going to put into employee compensation to combat the high CPI rate that we have. Three is health insurance. So my goal with health insurance is to keep that premium increase as low as possible. I asked for them to get it down to a 2 to 3% range to make it manageable. And luckily our experience rating brought us in at 2.25. So I'm in the ballpark already. It's just, do one of these tweaks make sense to you to further reduce that and further step us towards the HSA? That's really the question we're at.
So along those lines, depending on the item that we choose, I'm assuming that's going to impact cost of living or other salary increases, probably?
Yeah, it's, the employees say, well, I don't want any change. I'll take the 2.25% increase. Well, then there'll be less for wages. If I have a 1.4% increase in premiums, then that extra money goes into wages. So it's all going to the employees one way or another. I'm not spending it on something else if I save it here. Those are items 2 and 3 on the list. That's where the rest of the money is going to be going.
So then as a follow-up to that, I think it was, we talked about, there'll have to be a change, or the plan will have to be formulated, the HSA plan or whatever. It's already mid-July, with open enrollment coming up. Do you feel like there's time, if we were to choose that, to switch that way, that it would?
For this one, we wouldn't be adding the HSA because we wouldn't get to a high deductible health plan. So it would give us a whole nother year to look at then making that transition. And yeah, no, there's not time this year. But next year there would be.
So an HSA qualified high deductible for 2024 is going to be $1,500. And so we're at $500 deductible right now. So that's what we were doing with that option 3, is we were increasing it to $750. We were closing the gap so that next year when we increase the deductible, we're not increasing the deductible by $1,000, we're increasing the deductible by $750. We were stepping towards the HSA, but 2024 would be the target for when we would implement an HSA, if that's the route we go.
Supervisor Burning.
So if each one of these represents $10, or whatever, $2.25, let's just say on the first one, then if we went to the third one, and that's a $1.40 increase and $1 or 85 cents back to the employee. So they have 85 cents to play with if they use it instead of the 250 or whatever. Right, is that kind of, do you understand what I'm saying? Yep. I'd rather have money in my pocket and not go skydiving or, skateboarding. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean? Like, that's me. I don't know. I think if I was an employee, I'd like to have cash over
Right.
a
And that was
deductible
explained,
maybe
right?
being used.
Yeah, a higher increase is going to impact every single person on the plan, whereas options 2 and 3 only impact the utilizers of the plan, right? And so that was definitely explained during the meetings. They still kind of voted the way they did, but yeah, we definitely looked at the financial impact and future plan by keeping the current plan design, trying to go that traditional route over time. We definitely explained that the county cannot, right now, over the last 2 years, what we talked about was we were looking at a $1.2 million increase in county spend on budget, on insurance, and that's not sustainable, right? So if you, as an employee base, want to keep that traditional plan option, you are going to see double-digit increases in your premiums, or you're going to see a 80-20 split, maybe a 70-30 split in cost. You're going to see some plan design changes with that. We can still try and keep it a traditional plan without going high deductible if that's really what you don't want. But there will be changes, right? And so that was definitely talked about with everybody at these meetings. And that's still just kind of how the vote went.
So following up on that, so if we go with the third option, which is a 1.4% increase and an increase in the overall deductible, or the deductible for the participant, that helps us, one, ease the transition into the HSA over time, and two, there's the shock to the system in 2 years or a year or 3 years is going to be less on the employee.
Right, yep. And that was, that option had the second most votes. 32 out of the 115 voted
Yeah.
for that third option, even though it's kind of surprising because less people in the long run said that they wanted that high deductible health plan, but they still went for, right, what you're thinking, that more money in my pocket, less money out every paycheck. Let's
Yeah.
go with the 1.4% increase, so.
So are you looking for a motion from us on which one to approve? So I'm going to make a motion for,
Supervisor Lund.
No, I'm following Supervisor Burns.
Oh, I'm sorry. I make a motion to approve the third option, a 1.4% increase and a increase to the deductible to begin the transition to a high deductible health plan, increased deductible from $500 to $750.
And I would second that motion.
All right, so a motion and second. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Counter.
So do you kind of know what the mean age of the county employees are? How are we situated with where they stand? Because as they get to a certain point in life, they're going to be maximizing the amount that they have to pay out in deductibles versus the younger ones.
I'm thinking, we just went over those figures. I'm thinking it was between 39 and 41 as our mean age right now in the plan.
Well, one other thing to consider, if I may.
Supervisor Bernie.
At that 39 to 41 range, gee, I don't know anyone in that age range with 4 kids and almost all in sports with injuries, and you're going to hit that deductible, and that deductible, I mean, you should be budgeting for a lot of that at that age range. So, yeah.
All right, other comments? We're ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item, number 8, resolution regarding opioid settlement. And Ken.
Yes, so we're going to be receiving sometime soon the opioid settlement. Those numbers are really tiny. So there's two parts to the opioid settlement that I'm asking questions on and have proposed in the resolution. One is securitization of it or not. Do we want to sell the 18 years of payments to get a lump sum up front or not? So that's the first question. So we are getting $1,862,577 over this 18 years. It's this column right here. So payments 1 and 2, I think both come in 2022. So about $100,000 a year roughly over the next 18 years. If we securitize it, it slides over to here and we'll get $1,388,000. So we're sacrificing about $500,000 to securitize the funds. What we do though is we get $872,000 this year then, rather than the $121,000, and then the payments, future payments are decreased to about $20,000 a year after they trail off after a couple years, but down to about $20,000 a year. So securitization, so that's the first thing is do we want to get the money up front or do we want to take the money over time? So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are the odds of the two companies that are paying us going out of business? So one is Janus, it's Johnson & Johnson is the company. Janssen is the name of the company in the agreement. But they're a AAA bond-rated company, so when they issue bonds, they're AAA. So that company is probably pretty secure. I don't have any concerns about them. They are the shorter term of the two payments. So they're made up of two different pieces. So this is the Janssen portion of the payments. These are the payments we're going to be getting from them. Again, they're AAA rated. The second one is this distributor. The distributor is paying us over 18 years, and that's McKesson Distributors. They are a B-grade bond rating. And so a B-grade bond, I mean, isn't junk bonds, but it's not the same as a AAA bond. Really, the question you have to ask yourself is the company still going to be in business in 18 years? Really, if they go out of business, that's when you're going to lose the money. If they are still in business, a B-rated bonded company is probably still very viable to be making their annual payments. So those are the risk factors involved in it. So I guess I'll pause there to get your input into what you think about that risk.
Supervisor Burning.
Do we need to bring this for discussion or to a motion to discuss? No. Okay. So I guess what I would ask is, and maybe this is a question for Finance and Corp Counsel, what is the probability of us taking this money, and I'm assuming, so I'd hate to assume, so I'm going to ask one more question. This money is being used to help offset the costs that the county is experiencing from this opioid epidemic, and Health and Human Services using it for, incidents of overdose or drug addiction counseling and stuff like that, correct? Okay, so now that that's answered and I'm no longer assuming, what is the probability of us taking the lump sum payment and putting it in some vehicle that can pay us over time, and we use that money to offset a portion of Health and Human Services budget and have that money go back to the taxpayers? Did what I say make sense?
Leah, what's our average interest earning rate?
It's going up, I know that. It has to go up.
On what bonds? I mean, on the whole thing, it's like.
In our investments, what would be the average rate that we're earning on our investments? Because we can't buy stocks.
I don't know off the top of my head. Just got the stuff. I can look it up quick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 500,000 is the difference, and the risk is 500,000 over that long. I'm just looking at this going, what if we took it, put it into a vehicle whatever vehicle that we can use, and have that money yield a return for us? If we get half of that 250, I would rather do something like that and then utilize those returns over the next however many years on a similar schedule to what they would have paid us out and have us offset cost of Health and Human Services delivering that solution to our taxpayers.
Supervisor Fiedler.
I was just going to throw up, my best guess is we're getting 1 to 2%, from what I can understand in the investment market for entities like ourselves. You can ask the administrator what he thinks.
So $800,000, that's the lump sum amount, at 1%, that's $8,000 a year.
So follow-up question, and Leah, maybe you can answer this, like, how comfortable are you looking at a B rating going, oh, I think this distributor, like, I mean, I don't know, you're the money gal, like.
Maybe the money back gal, but I'm not totally into the investment
Okay,
gal.
okay, yeah, that's fine.
We don't typically invest in them.
Right. Well,
As a county.
I watched The Big Short again, and all those bonds were rated A and AA and yay, and then they were all crap, right? So it's like, I'm looking at this going, what do the next few years bring to some of these companies too? We don't know that. I don't know, taxpayers' money being offset, I'd like to play it safe. That's my, like, and not gamble on it with this particular set of distributors, but any of the other four can change my mind, or anybody on the other side of that table can change my mind, but I would rather take that, and we annuitize it over time, even if it's at 0%. That's my opinion.
Supervisor Long.
Well, one thing I learned in the private sector, I know many, many years, is it always seemed more advantageous to create a constant revenue stream rather than take big chunks here and there, because you can't really depend on when they're going to come. So I look at this, and I don't think there's enough value in terms of the securitization, and I certainly like the constant revenue stream. I think we can plan better in terms of what we can do with that money, which is one of the suggestions after we get past securitization. As to, the risks, I guess I'm comfortable with that. I like the idea of the constant revenue stream, that we can apply that much more easily in our budget on a year-by-year basis.
So what is the expected difference in use depending on what decision we make about securitization?
Well, I don't think the use would necessarily have to change. I think how we account for it financially would be different, but the use can be the same either way. Securitization and use can be separate issues. They're not tied together.
Yep, other comments?
And just to follow up on that for Ken's, we have to use it for specified uses that the opioid settlement allows us to. So there's certain remediation uses that we have to use it for, and then we have to make sure that we're accounting for that and reporting back if questioned that we're using it for a use that's set forth in the agreements.
Okay, do you want us to take the securitization first, or?
No, I have it as one resolution. Okay. I don't know that the use of it's going to be controversial, so why don't we go over that part, and we can then make a single motion.
Okay.
So the use of the funds, I've proposed, knowing where the demands are in the county, is that, and the list of opioid remediation uses that are available to us. The jail currently has a contract for medical and mental health services. In that contract, they provide mental health services just 2 days a week for inmates within the jail. They've expressed interest in more service delivery for mental health, and most of those are related to drug use issues that people have. So that is an authorized use within this. And so I'm proposing that we create a new full-time position within our behavioral health department and embed that employee full-time within the jail. So that would increase from 2 days then to 5 days a week, availability of a mental health professional in the jail servicing the inmates that we have within our custody. That's where I think the best use of the funds are. I know Bob Rohrt has some additional ideas of programs that he would like to see. related to alcohol or drug treatment. But this is the one that I felt was the highest priority.
Supervisor Fiedler.
To be quick, I just concur with the administrator's recommendation.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as written of declining securitization and identifying or adding a, I'm not going to say this right, substance use disorder, mental health.
Just as written. Just as written.
Just as it's written.
And-
Second.
All right, second by Supervisor Fiedler. Any other conversation? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, the next item, resolution allocating ARPA funding. Ken?
Yeah. So we have, of the 17.6 million that we received, we have about 7.5 million, $553,648 left over that we have not allocated for an authorized expense yet. And so we're at the point now where I'm trying to wrap this up and allocate the money, push it into a direction so we know how it's going to be used, so that we can get it used by the deadlines that the federal government has established for us. It has to be encumbered by the end of '24, completely spent by the end of '26. So I'm recommending the $7.5 million go into the capital improvement fund. And here's why. We're doing an $80 million construction project on the government center. We've seen some of the construction numbers. They're still in a lot of flux right now with commodity prices. Some of the project could potentially be higher than we originally anticipated. I do not want to go back to the county board and ask them to borrow more money. I'm not going to do it. I've already told them that's not going to happen. So this, though, $7.5 million would provide an incredible nest egg for me to bridge that if the bids came in higher than expected. So that's the main reason I want to move it over there. We will have a bid package that goes out this fall, and we will have the final bid package go out in February. So I'm going to know, 9 months from now, if we're within the $80 million that we borrowed, or if I'm going to run over. If I run over, I still have to have the county board authorize that expenditure, but I will have a source of those funds to cover that. And so that's where I'd like to move this money to in order to protect us against that variable.
Supervisor Counter? You?
Well, I was just going to make a motion.
Okay.
So I'd make a motion to approve taking the ARPA funding that's left and moving it over to the KIP fund.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Other discussion?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that we still have the flexibility of moving that out of the KIP if there are other needs that happen to develop. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I should clarify a couple of points maybe along those lines. One is this $7.5 million is from the lost revenue portion of our funds. So it does not have to be spent on an ARPA authorized project. It can be spent on any eligible, any project that's not eligible, which is you can't pay off debt service, you can't put it in a rainy day fund, and you can't reduce the tax levy with it. So those are the three things you can't do with it. Anything else, though, is available to use this $7.5 million for. So I wanted to clarify that. Moving it into the KIP is not necessarily a permanent move. It can always be reallocated out of the KIP fund by the county board. The county board can move monies between funds other than debt service. Debt service is a black hole. If you put it into debt service, it can't come out. So the county board has the ability to still move these funds around. And then the final point is I just wanted to say we have had other requests for KIP projects, and that's not taking any of those into consideration. I think the county has, a security blanket need right now that we want to use these funds for. If the county board wants to consider something else, though, with ARPA, now would be a good time, or next summer or spring, when we know what the final bids are, and I say, okay, we didn't need any of that. You could, at that point, also reconsider it. But I just want to be clear that we are allocating these funds, and that kind of closes the door on any request for additional ARPA funding.
Supervisor Fiedler.
I think it's a good proposal, and I understand the rationale for it. And I understand we could pull the money out of the KIP for something else. And I've been on the building committee, and I understand what its needs are or might be. But I was going to just raise the thought of doing a 90% solution from what the administrator recommended, and effectively taking 90% of the ARPA money and putting it into the KIP, and reserving 10% for unspecified other things that people can come to us for over the next short period of time. Doesn't mean it'll all be expended. So it's kind of the reverse. We can put it in KIP and take it out, or we can take it out and then put it back into the KIP if we don't need it. And I'm open to discussion. If there's any support for that approach, I'll make a formal amendment to that regard. I'm not locked into the 10%. If the administrator said he could live with 5%, I'd suggest 5% be retained. But I just think we are putting it in kind of a black hole when we put it into the KIP, and it'll kind of go to projects there that leaves a whole bunch of other folks out of the process. And so I'd prefer to pull back 5 to 10% of this money and just hold it to see if there are other projects across the board in the other counties' needs that we could expend this on. As the administrator said, it's fungible money, so we can spend it on anything virtually.
Any comments? Supervisor Long.
I guess this would be a question for Leah. Is it cleaner to do something along the lines of what Supervisor Fiedler is proposing, or is there a way that within the KIP that we can actually separately account for that particular piece so that we know that it's available to pull 5 or 10% out, whatever the case may be?
So currently, I am leaving all of the unspent dollars in an unearned revenue account. If you're talking accounting, I'm leaving it all there until the dollars are spent. You are simply reserving the money in a certain place. So I will put it on an Excel document, and on the financials in the system, I will leave it in an unearned revenue account until those dollars are spent, because that's when we actually earn or recognize the revenue from an accounting standpoint. So for me, it's a matter of just putting a number on a spreadsheet. So it's really not easier or harder one way or the other.
So when we account for the ARPA funds, the KIP funds, is this going to be readily identifiable, or does it kind of go into the black hole?
No, we can completely see that. So on those spreadsheets, you'll see it on the ARPA spreadsheet as the $10 million loss, or the lost revenue. So you'll see it there, and once you start spending it, you'll see it on that. But then you're also going to see it on the KIP spreadsheet, because it's truly both dollars. Because I have to, my ARPA is for my reporting purposes for the ARPA spending, and then the KIP is so that you guys can see what's available in the KIP. Even though it's not spent, it's like in a holding pattern, basically just on a spreadsheet though. So the dollars aren't on the financials until they're spent, if that makes sense.
Supervisor Fiedler, too?
Well, whether it's formal or not, if it goes into the KIP, it seems like we're putting it into capital projects. And so that eliminates everything else. And there's so many other needs that we have. And so I'm just suggesting that, well, we can pull it out, but it's got that sense it's got to be a capital improvements project. And if we take it out, we can spend it on anything we want to spend it on. But if we don't spend it, or if there's not a need for it, we can put it back into the KIP. So I just think it gives us more flexibility. And I think there's several very good projects that were, at least in the initial ARPA guidance, that and other needs that I know people would come forward with excellent ideas for the, let's just say, set 10%, $750,000 that we would pull out. And whether it be 10% or 5%, I just think that gives us some good flexibility. They say, I don't feel real strongly about this, other than, as I say, I do think it kind of goes into a black hole at KIP, and I just hate to be precluded from all the other wonderful ideas that the county would have. So I will make a motion to that effect, that we withdraw 10% from the motion, and that go into just not be allocated ARPA money, and the other 90% be as the administrator recommended.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I think I understand what the purpose of the motion is, but I'm wondering, when we look at the financials, there's a lot of accounts and string budgets all over the place, and I'm wondering if it will just be almost cleaner just to keep it all in the KIP. We can take it out of there easily, right, as by board action. And so I agree there might be other worthy projects outside of the KIP. I don't think we have made that decision yet, but from my perspective, I think it's cleaner to keep it in the KIP. Other comments? Supervisor Long.
I'm a little nervous about the numbers of the building expansion project. So I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of tuck this away for the short term, just to see where some of those numbers come out. I'd hate to think that we're going to get shorted and we're going to have to make some difficult decisions on the building expansion. So I guess I'm more comfortable just going ahead and right now at least plugging into the KIP as long as we can identify it and as long as we know that it's available for other projects should we need it.
Any other comments? No? All right, so I think we're ready to vote, and we're voting on, can someone read back the motion? Amendment?
So motion to basically amend line 15 of the resolution to allocate 90% of the 7.5 million for capital improvement projects, I believe is what the motion is.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so all in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed, okay, so I think it was 3-2. Fails, yeah. Correct, yeah. Okay, so we had vote on the amendment, so back to the original motion. That is in the packet. Any other comments on that? All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried. And we are down to our final business item. Consideration of mandated discretionary services, Corp Counsel.
Yes, so I have in the packet the spreadsheet of the items that are mandated and discretionary services that the Corporation Counsel Office performs. If you have any questions, I can surely answer them. I did go through and prioritize them, high, medium, and low. And as you can see from the spreadsheet, most of the expenses that are related to all the services the Corp Counsel Office provides are mostly wages and benefits. Our operating budget is very, very small, less than $10,000, I believe. We don't have much funding. We do take in some revenue for guardianship cases and then some funding that is received by other departments by the services we provide, specifically the Child Support Agency and Department of Health and Human Services for termination of parental rights cases. But if anybody has any specific questions about the services we provide or the ones that are discretionary versus mandated, I can surely go through any questions that the board may have.
Does anyone have any questions? Yep. Oh, all right. Comments, Supervisor Lung?
Thank you for the detail. It was really interesting to go through these line by line, and I did go through line by line, and I did not see anything that really, in my mind, dictated any type of a deep dive or further discussion. So I would leave it to the rest of the committee if they stumbled across something.
Any other comments? No, I guess we're letting you off easy.
Yay.
Thank you. Okay, that was all of our business items. Request for future agenda items. Anybody? No? No future agendas? Announcements or correspondence? We're all silent now. Okay, then, yeah. Well, let's adjourn the meeting at 6:46 p.m. Date of our next meeting, August 9th. All right, thank you, everybody.